This offseason just got interesting. A new trade rumor is floating around Cleveland.
And it could reshape the Browns' offensive line in ways nobody expected.
Let's talk about the name that just popped up, and whether this move actually makes sense. Because when ESPN connects the Cleveland Browns to a trade target, it's never random.
And this time, the rumor involves a player who could either quietly help fix a broken line, or become another frustrating gamble. So here's the big question to kick things off: are the Browns fixing problems, or just recycling them?
According to ESPN, Cleveland has been linked to Jacksonville Jaguars offensive lineman Walker Little.
It's not a blockbuster headline, but it's one of those moves that could matter a lot once the season starts. And when you dig into it, this rumor is way more complicated than it looks on the surface. The article makes one thing clear right away: Walker Little doesn't appear to be part of Jacksonville's long-term plans.
That alone raises eyebrows.
He's only 27 years old, has starting experience at left tackle, and has already earned a second contract in the NFL. Normally, that's exactly the type of player teams try to keep.
But there's a reason Jacksonville seems willing to move on. Little's performance last season took a noticeable step back.
In 2025, he struggled badly at left tackle.
He gave up pressure consistently, lost his starting job, and eventually was replaced.
According to tracking data, he allowed multiple sacks and over 50 pressures in just 12 games before a concussion ended his run.
That's not just below average. That's concerning. So when ESPN straight up questions whether Walker Little is even an average left tackle, that's not analyst fluff. That's a warning sign. And yet, this is where it gets interesting for Cleveland. Because the Browns aren't exactly shopping for perfection right now. They're shopping for bodies. Starters. Stability.
Anything that can stop the offensive line from collapsing again.
Look at the situation up front. Cam Robinson. Free agent. Jack Conklin. Free agent. Joel Bitonio. Free agent. Wyatt Teller. Free agent. Ethan Posick. Free agent. That's basically the entire line.
And the one young tackle who was supposed to be the future, Dawand Jones, missed most of 2025 with hamstring and knee injuries and is now entering the final year of his deal.
Even when healthy, he was inconsistent.
So yes, the Browns need help everywhere.
That's why Walker Little even enters the conversation. Now, let's be fair. Little wasn't always bad.
Just 1 year earlier, in 2024, he actually played solid football. His overall grading jumped significantly. His pass protection improved. His run blocking improved.
Penalties dropped.
Sacks allowed dropped all the way down to just 2 the entire season. That's the version of Walker Little that earned him a 3-year,
$40.5 million extension. And that's the version Cleveland would be betting on. But here's the problem: that contract.
Little is making roughly $11 to $12 million per year going forward.
That's starter money. Not depth money. Not let's experiment money.
So if Cleveland trades for him, this isn't just a flyer.
This is a commitment.
Now, could the Browns use him creatively?
Possibly.
Little is massive, 6'7", over 320 pounds. He has the frame to move inside to guard.
Jacksonville even experimented with him there at times.
And with Cleveland likely reshuffling the entire offensive line, positional flexibility matters.
Maybe he's not your left tackle. Maybe he's not even your right tackle long-term. But could he be a swing tackle? A guard?
A rotation piece who gives you options?
That's the argument. But then the doubt creeps in. Because Browns fans have seen this movie before. A lineman loses his job elsewhere. Cleveland trades for him hoping a new system will unlock something. And instead, the problems follow him.
That's why the Cam Robinson comparison makes people nervous.
And that brings us to the middle of this debate. Question of the day: would you trade a 5th-round pick for Walker Little and take on his contract, or would you walk away? Comment your answer below.
According to ESPN's mock proposal, the trade would look like this: Cleveland receives Walker Little and a 2027 7th-round pick.
Jacksonville receives one of Cleveland's 5th-round picks in this year's draft.
Which 5th? It doesn't matter much, Cleveland has 3 of them.
On paper, that's not an outrageous price.
But value isn't just about picks.
It's about opportunity cost. That 5th-rounder could be a young lineman on a rookie contract. Cheap. Moldable. Low risk.
Instead, you'd be paying starter money for a player who might end up being a backup. And that's where the hesitation comes in. Now, one reason this trade feels realistic is the history between these two franchises. Cleveland and Jacksonville have dealt with each other multiple times recently, and from Cleveland's perspective, those trades have gone very well. The draft day deal that landed Cleveland a massive haul while moving down just a few spots paid immediate dividends. Cleveland turned those assets into multiple young contributors who now look like long-term building blocks. Later, the cornerback swap favored Cleveland again.
The fit was better. The system worked. One player thrived, the other didn't. So there's trust. Familiarity. A working relationship between front offices.
That makes this rumor more believable than most.
But history alone doesn't guarantee success.
The real concern with Walker Little isn't just how he played last year, it's what his role would be. He doesn't solve the offensive line crisis.
He doesn't magically replace 5 departing starters. He doesn't anchor the unit. At best, he's a piece. And at $11 million per year, that's expensive for a maybe. There's also another angle Cleveland has to consider: veterans.
If the Browns can convince Joel Bitonio to return for one more season on a short, team-friendly deal, that stabilizes the line immediately. Even in a down year overall, he was arguably Cleveland's most reliable lineman. That kind of presence matters, especially if you're planning to draft multiple rookies and throw them into the fire. Keeping Bitonio reduces desperation.
And desperation is how bad trades happen.
Which brings us to another important question: is this a smart calculated risk, or a panic move because the line is falling apart?
That's what Cleveland has to answer internally. Because trading for Walker Little shouldn't be the plan. It should be a contingency.
If he's cheap enough, if Jacksonville eats some money, if Cleveland still attacks the line aggressively in the draft, then fine.
He's depth with upside. But if he's viewed as a solution, that's where things go wrong. Before wrapping up, there's one more serious update that needs to be addressed. Cleveland safety Ronnie Hickman was reportedly the victim of an assault at a New York City hotel earlier this week.
According to reports, he suffered minor injuries, was treated at a hospital, released, and is now home resting with his family.
By all accounts, he's okay, and that's what matters most. It's an unfortunate situation, and the best-case outcome in a bad scenario.
Hopefully, his recovery is smooth and this becomes nothing more than a footnote. So where does all of this leave Cleveland? The Browns are staring at one of the most important offseasons in recent memory.
The offensive line needs a full rebuild. The margin for error is thin.
And every decision, trades, contracts, draft picks, has to be made with a clear plan.
Walker Little is an option. Not a savior.
Not a disaster by default.
Just an option.
And now it's on the front office to decide whether that option is worth the cost or if patience and smarter investments will pay off more in the long run. One last thought before we go: if you were running the Browns, would you take a chance on a player like Walker Little, or would you bet on youth and clean contracts instead?
This offseason is going to define the next few years in Cleveland. And the clock is already ticking.